Welcome to 2026's second episode of Raining Cats and Dogs. I'm your host, Henry Jansen, sports writer for the Kirksville Daily Express. This evening's episode will be a little bit more of a mini-sode. We will be only raining dogs this evening. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day to everyone out there. We will not be joined by anybody from Kirksville High School Athletics this evening, but we will start off by talking to Truman head softball coach Ron Ferrill. Later on, we will be joined by Truman tennis coach Steve Smith. Ron, how are you doing this evening, sir?
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Ron Ferrill hired on as Truman softball coach in August of 2022. Over the course of his seasons at Truman, the first year that he was here, a previously 8-win team jumped to 17, and then the following year, that 17 turned to 23, and the Dogs are now coming off of his first above 500 season as the Truman coach when they were 26-25 last year, including recording a 500 record, 14-14 in the GLVC. Previously of St. Ambrose in Iowa, where he was 321, 231, and 1 during his tenure there. You know, firstly, before we talk about this year's team and a season that's just right out the back door, talk a little bit about just your softball journey in the coaching world.
Yeah, it's been an abnormal one, I suppose. I was big in baseball growing up. My dad started out as my baseball coach early on. And then later he took over a high school softball job to actually coach my younger sister. I joined the military, and when I'd be back on break, I would help him out. So I played a little softball for the Army as well. And I was back on a break. I was teetering whether I wanted to re-up into the military at the end of my tour or get out. And my high school principal ran into me, and he said he had an assistant coaching position for me if I was interested. Well, coaching was something that I had kind of gathered just from mainly working with my dad and just being around sports my entire life that I wanted to do. So I did take him up on it. I exited the Army at the end of my tour, started my college journey towards getting my education degree, and took an assistant basketball job. And that led to a high school head baseball job and a volleyball and girls basketball job. And then the weirdest or oddest situation happened, and Robert Morris University in Springfield, Illinois, their softball position opened up, but it was part-time. And I'm sure I probably got the job because no real softball coach would take a part-time gig probably. But my dad talked me into applying for the position, and much to my surprise, after a couple good interviews, they offered me the job. I went over there, and 2 years in, we had a great deal of success. We placed, we won a national championship at the smallest college level. And just kind of fate just kept happening, because after that, I happened to have a mutual friend that was friends with the athletic director at the time at St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa, Ray Shovelin. And I wanted to meet with him to take a look at my resume and my background and just tell me, what he thought I needed to do to move on to the next level. Well, lo and behold, they had a need for a softball coach at St. Ambrose. He offered me that position, and ultimately I went on a long run there of 12 years. The last 8 of that, I was also the Davenport Assumption High School coach. We won 4 state championships there. And then the fate just kind of kept happening. I wasn't really looking to leave St. Ambrose or Davenport. I had wonderful experiences up there at each of those venues. But I had a good coaching friend at the D2 level that kept pushing me he knew this position was open here. He knew the former coach, knew that she had left, and he kept encouraging me to come here and look at this position. And I didn't take him up on it at first, but after a couple of phone calls, I called the former athletic director here, Jerry, and we had a very long phone call. And at the end of that phone call, he invited me down for a visit. And really, it just seemed like a good fit. At first, I was a little nervous about the lack of recent success. There's great history here at Truman State a long time ago, but last coach had some speed bumps there, and just for whatever reason, things didn't work out, but they'd had a recent lack of success. But Jerry, I suppose, I don't know whether he really wanted me or he just a good salesman, but he pitched it as a rebuild that he had a lot of faith could be done. And, at the end of the day, when I went home and sat and thought about it a lot and talked to my wife, I just felt reinvigorated. I felt very welcome here at Truman. First of all, everybody just seemed very welcoming. They had plans for some improvements and I just got excited about it, and on a whim, with a little bit of prodding from my wife, we decided to make the move and come down here and take on the challenge. I'm in my fourth season here now.
12 years in any position is a long time at the collegiate coaching level. What were really some of those selling points that kind of sold you that maybe this is a challenge, especially knowing that you're in kind of a rebuilding process that made this job appealing?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and it may seem very weird to a lot of people, but I didn't realize how comfortable I had gotten up there. And, when I was young in my coaching career, that's part of going up there and meeting with that athletic director the first time. I was very ambitious, and who knows where the ceiling was going. Sure, wanted to shoot up through the ranks as quickly as I could. And once I got there, after you're in a place so long, comfort kind of set in, I think. And I didn't necessarily realize that, but I'd quit looking to advance, really. I was just real comfortable in the two positions that I was in, which was a big enough challenge doing both jobs at the same time. It occupied an immense amount of time, but I loved both the high school and the college for two different reasons. They were different levels, different responsibilities, and I loved them both in their own way. But then, it wasn't until I got down here and interviewed and looked at it that all of a sudden that kind of excitement factor came in, and I realized, you've been on cruise control a little while. If you're going to get out of cruise control and take an opportunity and maybe see where things go again, this is a great opportunity, because if I, could turn the program around here, I have won everywhere I've been, at least to some extent. And that felt like if we could go to the NCAA level and do the same thing again, that would look awful good. And so, the challenge excited me, and I guess here we are.
For somebody who has at least had this program in their peripheral for a very long time, if you would have told me around 4 years ago that we would be at a point this quickly where Truman was ready to compete, you guys were 6th in the GLVC last year going into the tournament. If you would have told me that this turnaround would be that quick, I would have been very pleasantly surprised, I think. And so kind of what goes into that, increasing in wins, from 8 wins the year before you were here to 17, then 23, then a 26-win season where you guys are above 500. I mean, what does that kind of steady trajectory look like from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, well, I think, it goes way back further than anybody probably realizes. And I got to give the most credit to actually the group I didn't recruit, but the seniors my first year. And they weren't even recruited by the coach before me. They were coached by the one before that, which is Aaron Brown, who's now down at Lindenwood, coaching D1. That group of kids, when I came in, they'd been a little undercoached, to be honest. They were under fundamentals. They hadn't been pushed to be where they should be. But what they were great people, and they were very dedicated, and they got excited about what I brought to the table. And they really, that senior group, they could have known, hey, it's our last year. We got a new coach. We can go through the motions. Let's check out and get out of here and be done. Instead, they did the opposite. They worked so hard, and they helped me set the tone for what I think is our current culture. And if that would have been a bad group of seniors, I don't know if I could have turned things around as fast. But they were so good, just with me and taking coaching and working. Then that led to stage 2. And stage 2 was getting in the people that we needed to get in here athlete-wise. And I tell you what, it's not super hard recruiting smart young women to Truman State University. The academics are fantastic, and I can't speak for the men's side, and I'm not even going to try. But you get on the women's side, especially if you're looking for smart, intelligent, high IQ young women, that is what I try to focus on. they seek you out to an extent. I mean, Truman State is highly sought after for the academics. So getting that first recruiting class was huge, and getting a mix of transfers and freshmen was huge. Uh, Also, deepening up the roster. When I got here, we had 16 on roster, and there wasn't competition at every position. And when you didn't have competition at every position, it was maybe challenging to motivate everybody. We had a lot of self-motivated people, and we had some that weren't so self-motivated. So we upped the numbers to 20, and currently we're 21. Created competition at every position, brought in all high academic people, and we've continued that for through a few years here. A huge get for us was the new softball field, and that was part of the understanding when I came here. Our old softball field was not much to talk about. Well, I needed another selling point outside of just the academics here, and coming in and putting new turf in, one of the nicest turf fields actually in the state of Missouri at any level, putting that in really gave me that bolster of recruiting where I had the academics, but I also had something pretty nice on the athletics side. And so we've surrounded ourselves here in the program with self-motivated, high IQ young women that want to do the right thing, and that with hopefully a little bit of discipline and some focus on fundamentals for me, and so far it's led to us trending in a good direction, and think, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic that trend's going to continue here in the near future.
Very good, sir. I really like that too, because that's kind of a two-way street when you talk about a new field and I'm just looking at this from an athletics perspective from the university. Like, it's not only a recruiting tool for young athletes who come and visit campus, it's also a great sign of confidence to give to a coach who accepted this position, understanding that this was going to be part of the deal in the near future, and then actually getting it done. Talk a little bit on that side of things. You mentioned that coming to Truman, a huge part of that was, are we going to get a new field? Well, yeah, we sure are.
Yeah, and they really followed through. The school did, and they really have in everything. I feel like, all 3 years I've been here, we've been able to make some sort of improvements to the program, and that only happens if you're getting support from the school, and of course that started with the guy that hired me, Jerry Wilmering, and but now has continued with Signe, our new athletic director. But they broke ground within a couple weeks of us finishing my first season here, and had that field playable in the fall when we opened up. So roughly 3 months, tore out all the side fencing, home run fencing from dugout to dugout, tore out the field, came back in. We have one of the only turf fields like ours in the state that I'm aware of. The outfield grass area is like any turf field you'd find about anywhere. It's longer grass and rubber pellets. The infield is actually shorter grass and cork and olive pits and a different material. So it's almost like two different turf surfaces. And that infield is designed to play more like dirt. And that's been a huge factor for us because our conference is about half dirt fields, half turf fields. So we might be sitting here on a Friday night practicing on turf and playing Saturday somewhere on a dirt field. We had the number one ranked defense in the conference last year and was in the top 15 in the nation most of the year. And I really am pretty vocal about contributing a lot of that to the field because it really smoothens our transition out going from our field to a dirt field. But all new home run fence, and that was finished up by that fall, and we opened up and played our fall games, our off-season scrimmages on the new field, and it's been a great addition to the program. Just talking specifically to the field.
And I mean, two things and people will argue to the end of the earth about whether or not it's the same game, but the two things that you're guaranteed to get are, fewer rainouts and more consistency on hops. And maybe does that contribute a little bit to when you're talking about walking into a program that when you were first here in the fall of 2022 wasn't necessarily like fundamentally squared away, knowing the hops that you're going to get, knowing the bounces you're going to get every day in practice. Does that make a difference as far as you see it?
Yes, it gives a huge amount of confidence to the players just day in and day out. I remember that first year, um, before I got here, it maybe wasn't an expectation to slide in the bases at practice and dive for balls on a regular basis like, I picture should be an everyday thing, but it wasn't maybe necessarily expected. So I've got to change that practice mentality first on how we're going to practice and set tone of practice. Well, but then you get out there, and if it's too dry, it's a dust bowl and you're getting horrible hops 10 minutes into practice, or you might get rain and then it dries out and it's like concrete and the girls don't want to slide in because it's tearing up their legs and everything. And you're trying to set a tone for them to play at a higher tempo. But in reality, you couldn't hardly help but feel sorry for them because they were tearing themselves up every time they slid or dove, bad hops about taking off their head. Well, now they can go take the field, and we take hundreds of ground balls every single day of practice. And I haven't seen but maybe one or two bad hops on that field in the couple years we've had it. So those players go to the field knowing every time they get a ball hit at them, it might be fast, it might be hot, but it's going to be pretty true. And so they can rely on their skill set versus panicking and worrying about taking one to the head or the face.
From a coaching perspective, that's an interesting thing I've never really thought about, is that confidence aspect. Of knowing that you're going to get like you say, a true hop. Talk a little bit about this group. So we open up, the Dogs open up February 6th, 7th, and 8th in Bentonville, Arkansas. You guys have, over the course of 3 days, and this is a really fun group. Arkansas at Monticello, East Central University, Emporia, Northwest, Washburn, and St. Mary's. And that, as we're talking about it right now, I mean, that's just a short, a little bit more than 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
And it's here.
Yeah, it's coming in a hurry. Our preseason is an absolute gauntlet. We have 4 preseason tournaments plus another on the road 4-game stretch. And I don't think I made anybody mad, but every schedule I look at, it's just great team after great team after great team. I mean, our girls are going to be really, really challenged this year. To open up with 6 games in a weekend, that's hard to prepare for because, we're indoors a lot. Hopefully we get out before then. Having our turf field might get us out there if temperatures help out. But just to try to get in 3 weeks, coming off Christmas break, and then getting yourself to the point that your girls can physically handle 6 games in 3 days is super challenging. And thank goodness, our girls came out of Christmas break just in great shape. I told them today that I really felt like we're ahead of schedule on that note. But some of these schools are schools that are further south. They're already, probably not today, but already been getting some outdoor practice time. Some of them have indoor facilities that allow for hitting live ground balls. We're not going to get any live work until and unless we can get outside. And 2 years ago, we were outside the entire week before we left. Last year, we got outside one day for an hour. If the weather holds like this, my girl's first live ground balls might be coming off some 22-year-old woman's bat in a way that matters. So definitely a challenge getting ready here on short notice, but our girls are sure working hard preparing right now.
Talk a little bit about just the complexion of your group. Just talk a little bit about some girls you expect to have some big seasons and what you guys are working with. I like a lot that you say you're ahead of schedule, but until you see live action, who really knows? Just talk about your group a little bit.
Well, we return a lot, and that's promising when we had the top defense and top offense in the conference. Unfortunately, we struggled in the pitching department last year, and it's a game that's as much as any other sport revolves around one position, and in softball, it's that pitcher. But we return a ton. Our leadoff batter is Cassie, our left fielder. One of the fastest girls in the conference, led the team in batting average last year.
coming off of an all-conference season.
Coming off an all-conference season. She's just dynamic, hard to get out, plays a solid left field, very fast. Our likely two batter, it could see a few people, but our right fielder Callie Coombs came in last fall, just really solidified right field in the fall and the number 2 spot. And then in one of our last practices of the fall, before going into the season, she tore her all 3 ligaments in her knee, and we lost her for the year. But she's really bounced back, looked the part. She actually was one of our leaders in hitting in the fall. Behind her is our Iowa State transfer, Emily Wood. Emily's one of the bigger recruits maybe the school's ever got, but definitely one of the bigger ones I got. She came in 2 years ago. She was the Iowa Player of the Year and Iowa Athlete of the Year in high school. I coached against her where I was at, so I was very familiar with how dynamic she was.
Good.
Yeah, she went to Iowa.
That's very cool.
She went to Iowa State. Yeah, she hurt me quite a few times in high school softball. But so we had very much a love-hate relationship. She went to Iowa State. Definitely at that level a player, but got injured her first year, didn't have the best experience, and trusted us enough to transfer in here. One of the best outfielders in the country, one of the most dynamic hitters. She can lay down a bunt for a base hit. She can steal a base, and she can hit it out of the park. So I mean, just a dynamic all-around player. And then my first base DP, Avery's coming into her sophomore year. She hit cleanup for us all year last year as a freshman. Lefty, extreme power. So we throw a weird dynamic at our opponents right there. We go lefty, 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 lefty to start off with 4 of them and a fair amount of speed. Our entire conference our entire outfield is a potential all-conference type player. Cassie and Emily very much could be, all region and maybe all American players if they can continue the pace they've been on the last couple of years. Come to the infield, we return both of our middles and Lily and Maddie Hickman. At second base, Maddie is also a D1 transfer. We got in 2 years ago that tried the D1 route, and I definitely think she's a D1 player, but wasn't the right experience, wasn't the right fit, and she had kind of heard about the things we were doing here and reached out, and we took a chance there, and of course that was a jackpot for me. Our corners were the 2 spots that we graduated that we had concerns about a little bit, but
corner infield,
yes. Our first and third. Third, we went out and we recruited Indian Hills shortstop to come in and help out there. We also have one of the leading home run hitters in the state of Iowa last year, in Katie Pilcher, came in to catch and play third. And we return a girl, Sophia, that was injured last year that has serious potential, starts some as a freshman there. So where Kerrigan Baker was our third baseman last year, had just an amazing year, but we went the route of depth, and so far hoping that pays off. Avery primarily DP'd last year, moves right into the first base spots, and we also have a little bit of depth there with a senior Brooke Nutter that has a fantastic glove. Catcher, we return our starter from last year, Kylie Salyers, that was a transfer from DMAC that I also coached against. She was up in Muscatine and been to the state tournament a couple times. So we have her back. So it really, in the off season was now going to come down once I filled that left side. It was going to come down to, could we solve this problem at pitcher? And part of our problem last year was, it was a lot of problems, but a couple of them was we had a couple girls pitching with torn labrums. One of them, unfortunately, her surgery has ended her year this year. The other one, however, we get back this next week. I have a little depth there in Lydia Feisty, and she showed us some great innings last year with a torn shoulder. We're hoping now coming off recovery. But I went out and we targeted a couple transfers, and we got Jada Long from Iowa Central Community College. She actually pitched them to the national semifinals this last year. Got to watch her in the national tournament, and she's a little gamer. She's a perfectionist. She never misses her spot. She's so fun to call the game for because I know what I call. She's going to hit. And then we kind of took an exciting gamble, and it's sure paying off. Des Moines Area Community College had 4 freshman pitchers in, and one of them got hurt. And I was familiar with her from the travel game, and it's Maddie Cleaver, and she ended up having a red shirt last year, and looking at what was ahead of her, returning, she kind of had an uphill battle. They were going to return 3 starters, and she wanted to know she could compete right away. I was familiar with her, and I reached out, and we gave her the opportunity to come here and compete. And so far, she's been dynamite. So we've got kind of for sure, we're working 5 pitchers. We've got a for sure 3 pitcher rotation with a couple other young ladies helping us out with Brooke and Avery being able to give us some depth. And if that pitching holds, I feel like we're an exciting enough team that we should be able to give anybody fits up there.
It sounds like a lot different than when you first walked in the door 4 years ago, and you're saying we're not even having positional battles, and now it just seems a lot more like iron sharpens iron, so to speak, all over the field.
It is. We will have some young ladies on the bench this year that would start for a lot of teams, and that's not because they're doing a darn thing wrong. I'm just as proud of them at this moment. But when you have, Emily Wood in front of you and people like that, it's just, it's some of our starters are good enough. It's just, they just are beating you out. But then again, some of our starters are only as good as they are because they have some really good players behind them, pushing them, letting them know that, hey, if you aren't working hard, I'm here to take your spot.
Breathing down your neck.
For sure.
What at this point in time what are these girls telling each other? If you had to guess, what are their realistic expectations for one another? How do you think that they at this point in time think their season is going to go?
Wow. We kind of had that talk a little bit today, and by that talk, it was a one-way talk. I talk, they listen. But it's it's really hard to know for sure because they always want to make me happy and satisfy me, so I can ask them that question, and they might tell me, well, we think we should, get nationally ranked or make win the conference or whatever, and I don't know if I can believe them or not. The reality is they were knocking on the door last year. I think we had 16 losses. First winning record the school's had in 5 or 6 years. We had 16 losses by 2 runs or less. I mean, when we did lose, we were right there. Well, we had the talk today that I felt like last year we went into every game hoping that we would win. Well, it's time for us to turn the page and realize that we're talented enough that it's time to go face these big teams early in the season, that when they look at the schedule, they see Truman State and they think, okay, that's one of the games we can win this weekend. Well, it's time to fix that problem, and it's time to expect to win every game. And, if they buy into that and they do believe in that, then I don't see any reason why we can't compete right at the top of the conference. And I'd like to think that we have a lot of girls that truly believe that. But we're going to find out here real quick.
Before we let you go watch a national championship game, Coach, one last thing I want to ask you. When you talk about intentionally scheduling some of these very difficult, you could almost call them preseason, early season weekends, that 6-game stretch in 3 days, what are just a handful of things that you want to see where you can come back from Bentonville and say, I'm encouraged with this group and what we did this weekend, no matter what?
Well, I feel like the biggest question mark with this team is just our pitching. And when I say question mark, I'm excited about our pitching staff right now. But that was the biggest thing that held us up the last 3 years. And really last year, that was the biggest hiccup. So when you return most of your team and you know where your biggest hole is, and as a coach, you went out and tried to fill those spots. Well, now, I could say it's not really on those pitchers. It's really on me and whether I made the right decisions and the right effort when I went out and I recruited these young ladies that are going to pitch for us. And if we get really good competitive outings from those pitchers in Bentonville, I'm going to feel like we're going to compete with anybody on the year because our defense, if not on week one, our defense will be one of the best defenses in the country by week 3 or 4. So that pitching on that side, and then on the other side, are we on the offense? Are we going to be just what I think we are? And that's just an aggressive, scrappy, dynamic offensive team that can beat you more ways than one, beat you with small ball, beat you running the bases, or go for the fences. And I feel like if we come out of there with a bunch of good approaches at the plate, win or lose, tight games, I can fine tune it. It's just, did we look like we were having good competitive at bats? Did the girls look in the face like they believed in themselves? And if I see that and we get some good pitching, then I'm going to come out of Bentonville pretty excited about what's down the road.
I appreciate it, Coach. I really like what you say too. You have a bunch of different possibilities, a bunch of different looks, 1 through 4 coming out with 4 girls batting from the left-handed side of the plate. Really gives you an opportunity to open up the playbook a little bit.
It does, and it's something not many pitchers see. Not back to back to back like that, and dangerous. And then the scary thing about that is you get down there into our 7, 8, 9. All of our 7, 8, 9 were 3 and 4 batters on their prior teams or prior programs or somewhere else. So as dynamic as our top is, it's almost as scary at the bottom just because those other pitchers, when they're used to maybe seeing at least a little fade off in the back end, our tail end's going to give us some very competitive at bats.
Coach Ron Ferrill, Truman State University, head softball coach. We appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you. Joined now by Truman women's tennis coach, Steve Smith. Coach Smith, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah.
Very nice to have you. Smith came on to the coaching staff in the 2019-2020 year. Is that correct?
Yep.
At Truman State University.
Second half was COVID.
And so you had a half a season.
Yeah, we went until spring break. Yep.
Yeah, and then the world shuts down, as does your season.
Yeah, that's right.
So when did you guys pick up tennis, being a sport where your season is basically the full year with just a bunch of months in between, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So did you guys pick up on the back end of 2021?
Yeah. So 2000. So fall 2020, and we did a lot of things like I marked out where the seating is. So we kept 6 feet apart, and we had rules about who can handle the balls and all kinds of things. So it was an adventure.
The Dogs right now coming into the second half of their season. They'll be back in action February 7th at Evangel. Sitting at 3-3 right now, entering the holiday break. Where does your team stand? What are you looking at for between now and February 7th, and where do you guys go from here?
So we're practicing hard. My expectations for the team is they work hard in class and out of class. They support each other, and we're trying to get more fit right now during the winter months, and getting a lot of good hitting in, and we're just going to try to play good tennis.
What goes into some of that fitness stuff, especially since in the middle of the season, there's just so much time in between competitions?
Right. So we put more time in the weight room, and we do a lot of core body training to help protect them so they don't get hurt, and also some flexibility. We do some yoga.
Expectations kind of coming into the second half of the season. You guys are just one after another after you pick back up on February 7th. What are you, from a coaching standpoint, looking to see when you're back in the full swing of things?
What I want to see is us playing well. So good tennis. They need to respect their opponents, respect their teammates, respect the game of tennis, and play good tennis. Those are all goals that help you achieve things.
And the rest of it kind of follows after that.
Talk about your lineup a little bit.
Sure.
Highlight some of these young ladies.
Sure. So Sydney Dial is a senior. She plays number one. And we also have another senior, Lena Dostal. So she's coming back. We have Naina Mohanty from India. She plays our two. And we got Mary Grace Seymour. She's our four. Finley LaForge. She's our three. Got a freshman, Belle Daniels. She's our five. The other freshmen with her are Rachel Bevins and also Leah Weisinger. Rachel and Belle are from St. Louis, and Leah's from Kenosha, Wisconsin. They are contributing and helping us significantly in our meets and in just providing support to each other and good practice for each other on the team. We also have Hamari Maruyama from Japan, and also Amelia Willing or from Quincy.
When it's everybody has a unique story, but you talk about your international students a little bit. Do they find our program, or do you have to go out and find them?
So that's a really good question, by the way. I appreciate that question. And so it can happen all kinds of different ways. So with Hamari, so we only have two internationals. One is Hamari, and she found me after she had already been a student here. So she had done came to study English, the English language, like the semester before. And then in the fall of last year, she started as a student. She contacted me, had a tryout, and she came onto the team after already being at Truman. Naina, actually, I had communicated with a couple of years before, like during her junior year in high school in India. I just happened to watch some of her video, and then she contacted me, and we just had a long, email conversation with each other, and it's definitely worked out.
I just always find it super interesting. Tennis, collegiate tennis, especially Division II collegiate tennis, just how people, finally find their home and end up with the programs they end up with.
It's leaves in a stream, and they all end up someplace, but it's not very predictable.
How does the domestic recruiting trail work for you in a year-round kind of cycle?
So I get a lot of kids who do contact me, and I'll also take a look at some video that's under different websites, but the ones that show the most interest are always the ones that contact me. And, so we have a lot of kids from Missouri, in particular, but also Illinois. And it has more to do with just making a real contact with someone. So you get contacted by all kinds of agencies and stuff, and they really don't know much about you or your school and whatever. And that doesn't necessarily go anywhere in particular. But for the people who have an idea of the school, what it's about, what your program's about, if you can make a connection with them, then it can turn out.
For a team sport that is just as much of an individual sport as is a team sport, and just looking for athletes, looking for, women who you think can succeed in this program. I mean, just what does that process kind of look like?
Sure. That's a great question. And probably the first paragraph of anybody who emails me, that looks like it could be a successful fit, they'll say is, I'm looking for someone who works hard in the course, in the classroom, on the court, and is interested in being supported by and supporting other women on the team. And then I just go from there.
And just to anybody who may be watching this, who this might apply to, I think that's always kind of interesting too, because there's still obviously that kind of degree of a cultural fit, but at the same time, if you're going to succeed in the classroom and you can play tennis well, then there's going to be a spot for you somewhere out there.
I think so, yeah.
where do you guys go after you go to Evangel on February 7th? I was looking at it earlier, and I know it gets rolling just really quickly from that point onward, even throughout just February before you get into March. What are some specific events that you're looking ahead to?
Yeah, so the first one is the first weekend in February, as you say, in Springfield at the Cooper Tennis Center against Evangel. And then the following weekend, we're going to be in Des Moines and play Grandview.
Very good. And is there really any shift that you necessarily have? I mean, you talk earlier about maintaining fitness and getting swings in and things like that. But I mean, there's of course some rust to be shaken yet, surely.
Yeah.
What in those just first couple of meets, do you feel like you're going to be full speed ahead? Like your team is going to be 100% on the?
That's a good question. Of course, you only get match ready by playing matches. And it probably takes a few to do that. But in terms of you have to move the court. You have to get comfortable with your ground strokes, things like that. And that'll happen very soon. But in terms of just playing out sets of tennis, it's good to get a few of those in. In terms of practice, one thing that really helps and one thing I really enjoyed as a player in practice was playing competitive drills. So we do a lot I think muscle memory is a big deal in tennis. I think the quality hitting is the most important thing and the most important aspect to developing a player. And if you center that around competitive drills where somebody's trying to do something better than somebody else, it's just funner. And that helps you get ready for meets.
And one thing that I'll ask you before I let you go, and I would be remiss not to ask this, you've been a huge part of tennis in our area for a long time, well before just taking over this position in 2019. Talk to me upon, some of the differences coaching at a high school level versus coaching at the collegiate level, and just things that you have, just some observations that you've made along the way during your tennis journey over the years.
Oh, that's interesting. So I've been involved in park and rec programs. I did park and rec programs in a couple different cities, including Kirksville, for a total of probably 35 years. That's a lot of fun. I had kids that started taking lessons in my summer program from age 7 and then stayed with me through age 18. Some of those kids played in college. So it's easy to do things in a group setting for kids so they have a lot of fun at tennis. And that's really one of the most enjoyable things that I've done. I went over to high school for 15 falls because I was the girls coach at the Kirksville High. And what's interesting about those kids in particular is you can take somebody who really didn't play a lot of tennis, but if they're motivated, they have good hand-eye coordination, they're a good athlete, they can become good pretty quick. So you can play catch-up much faster at the high school level than you can at the collegiate level. The collegiate level, you just have to be patient. It might take longer, but if they're a good athlete and they're motivated, they're going to get their game up. And whether it's high school or college, the main thing is you want to put them in a comfortable frame of mind. So they're not psychologically stressed out. And if they just start playing the ball and not worrying about other things, it can be a very positive experience and be a very successful program.
I just especially wanted to ask that because on an evening of a Kirksville and Truman podcast where we didn't have any Kirksville representation, well, you have both sides of that perspective.
Well, I appreciate that.
And so I appreciate that as well. Coach Steve Smith, anything to add?
I do want to add one thing. This group that I have now, these 10 kids that I've mentioned, they do a great job of supporting each other, and they've also been very involved in service work and volunteer work. They put in over 100 hours this fall, and over 80 of those are at the animal shelter. And a lot of that was being led by one of our doubles teams, Finley LaForge and Mary Grace Seymour, who we also call the twins. Even though they're not actually sisters, they seem like it. Just hang out a lot. And they kind of led that for us. I heard Mary Grace mention last year that would be a good thing to do, and I hopped on that because I myself have 4 cats and 2 dogs, and 5 of them are from shelters. So that's been a real positive for us this fall.
Very good. And they're at the humane. They've been doing it at the Humane Society.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I'm glad that you plugged that. That service work. That's really cool.
Well, every animal needs a home.
That's exactly right. And unfortunately, as anybody who's listening to this podcast knows, you've probably seen 6 or 7 stray cats today in the extreme cold of Northeast Missouri. So
yeah,
I'm glad that you guys have just kind of a unified like philanthropy and something you can get behind.
Well, my kids made it easy. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Coach Steve Smith, Truman women's head tennis coach. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
See you, Nick.
It has been raining cats and dogs. Thank you guys very much for joining us this evening, and we will be back with you next Wednesday. Hope everybody had a lovely Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thank you guys very much for joining us.